Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we are going to be talking about the Detroit Lions and how they could be a very underrated team in 2022. But before we hop into the content of today's video, if you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you guys do enjoy it. We're on the road to 3,000 subscribers, so if you guys are new, be sure to hit that button. And with all that being said, let's hop into the video about the Detroit Lions and their potential in the 2022 NFL season. Now, before we really get into the future of the Lions and what to expect next season, I want to give a little bit of background about their past couple years and how the Lions have really gotten to this point where they've been able to kind of build for the future, rebuild, get a bunch of new players, new GM, new coach, and what it kind of took to get here. For starters, I don't really think it's unfair to say the Lions have been one of the most troubled franchises in the NFL, and they've been around since 1957, and since that time, in 62 seasons, the Lions have only been to the playoffs 12 times, which is pretty insane when you think about it. The Lions only have one postseason victory in the Super Bowl era, and it came in 1992, and the Lions have not won a playoff game since. And I just cannot even begin to imagine what that is like as a fan of the Lions, and also kind of being a player in that environment. It's not like the Lions haven't had good teams, it's not like they've had good players. They've had some of the greatest players we've ever seen in the NFL. They've had Calvin Johnson, they've had Barry Sanders, and they've even had Matthew Stafford, who we'll talk about a little bit later in the video. But those are just some of the best players in franchise history, and none of those players were really able to eclipse anything significant for the Lions, and now they're getting to that process again where they're rebuilding and hoping to achieve something they haven't done since 1992. And really, this process began a few years ago, even though the Lions weren't really intending it to begin. It was really when Jim Caldwell was fired from Matt Patricia. That was a big mistake the Lions did. Caldwell posted a 36-20 record with the Lions. He had 2 playoff appearances and a 4-year stretch, and it was really the greatest stretch the franchise have had going back 30 years to their last playoff win. But for some reason, the Lions ownership was not satisfied with their lack of playoff wins in those 2 appearances. They fired him, brought in Matt Patricia, and that turned out to be an absolute disaster. Patricia came in trying to be Bill Belichick 2.0, and as a result, it didn't really work out too well. He went 13-29-1 as the Lions head coach, and he was fired last year, and that was when the Lions got their new head coach, Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell was not the only new member to join the front office. They also brought in the Los Angeles Rams director of college scouting, Brad Holmes, as their new general manager. Then, after bringing 2 new leaders in for the franchise, the Lions made one of the toughest decisions in franchise history, and that was to trade away one of the best players in franchise history, Matthew Stafford, to the Los Angeles Rams, who sent Jared Goff 2 first-round picks and a 3rd-round pick. And for Lions fans, it was a pretty tough day. Stafford had been a great player for the Lions for over a decade. He's been very influential in the community in Detroit. He's helped out the city a ton, and he's just been a great role model and player for the organization and team. And to get rid of a stud quarterback, and especially the best in franchise history, that's not easy to do, but the Lions kind of knew it was time to flip the page, let Stafford go on somewhere else and try to see if he can find some success, which he did in winning a Super Bowl for the Rams last year and having one of his better statistical seasons of his career. And it was also time for the Lions to kind of move on from the Stafford era and try to find pieces and a new quarterback to kind of lead the way for the team. Although Stafford was really good for the Lions, he wasn't able to enjoy the team success that many quarterbacks are able to achieve in the NFL. The Lions weren't really able to build a solid enough team around him or get the right coaches in place, and the Lions are really hoping to get it right this time around. But now that we've kind of touched on how we got to last season, what the moves that they made, their new coaches, and kind of their dysfunction of an organization, now we can get into the 2021 NFL season and what their future is looking like as we head into next season. Going into the season, many people thought that the Lions were going to be the first team ever to lose 17 games in a season because of the added game to the NFL schedule, and become the only team in NFL history to have 2 seasons where they lost every single game. But that did not turn out to be the case. The Lions went 3-13-1 and were often fairly competitive to winning a lot of other games during the season that just didn't really go their way. But for starters, Justin Tucker hit a 66-yard field goal to have a walk-off victory for the Ravens to beat the Lions, and that's just one of a few games that the Lions were very competitive in and just failed to close the game. And I don't really think the Lions fans cared too much, or the Lions organization. It was kind of a transition year, the beginning of a rebuild. The Lions were really trying to get the most out of their rookies, their newcomer players, and kind of begin to build a culture and establish a new regime in Detroit. And I think they were very successful in doing that last year. The Lions' first pick in the 2021 NFL Draft was Penei Sewell, and he turned out to be an absolute stud for the Lions. He slid in at right tackle and started off a little bit slow last year, but turned into an absolute stud, and is already one of the best young tackles in the NFL. The next two selections for the Lions was two defensive tackles, Levi Onwuzurike and then Aleem McNeil, and they both took steps in year one, and they should be looking to get better as we enter year two, and they could be very important pieces to the Lions defense as we get into the future. And then one of the best picks of the entire draft for any team was Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions in the 4th round. He almost had 1,000 yards receiving as a rookie, and he was really the go-to target for Jared Goff, and he's definitely a building stone for the Lions on the offensive side of the ball. I also would like to mention the Lions had a lot of injuries on their offense last season, and I'm really going to be looking forward to seeing how these players perform next year. DeAndre Swift missed a lot of time last year. I actually drafted him in fantasy. He was one of my top picks last year. He was an absolute stud when he played, but he dealt with some shoulder and groin issues throughout the season, which had him miss multiple weeks during the season. TJ Hawkinson, their electrifying tight end, he only played 12 games as well, and he's a key piece of their offense as he was their first round pick back in 2019. He still had 600 yards and 60 catches in 2021, so I expect his production to be off the walls as he enters year number 4 in the NFL. And then really one of the most intriguing parts about the Lions offense is their offensive line, which was missing a lot of key pieces throughout the year. Their center, Frank Ragnow, who is one of the best centers in the entire league, played in only 4 games last year. And Taylor Decker, who is one of the top left tackles in the league, only played 9 games as well. So you have 2 of the better players on the Lions overall team, and 2 of the better linemen in the entire NFL miss a lot of time last season. And the Lions still have the number 13 offensive line according to Pro Football Focus. So now imagine with their starting center back and Taylor Decker playing a full season, a year 2 of Penei Sewell, and the Lions should definitely have a top 10 offensive line going into 2022. So those are some of the pieces I'm really interested about on the Lions offensive side of the ball. This offseason, they didn't make a ton of moves. They really focused on re-signing a lot of their own players and getting some more depth in positions. But really the biggest signing they made was getting DJ Chark, signing him to a 1-year deal worth $10 million. And then in the draft, the Lions made a huge amount of noise. With their first pick, they drafted Aiden Hutchinson, an edge rusher out of Michigan. I actually thought he was going to be the first pick in the draft, but the Jaguars elected to pass on him and go with Trayvon Walker. So the Lions got their hometown talent, and then they traded up from the Rams pick, and they got Jamison Williams out of Alabama, who many saw as the most electrifying wide receiver in the entire class. And then in the 2nd round, they also got another pass rusher in Josh Pascal out of Kentucky. So you pair him with Aiden Hutchinson now, and with some of the pieces that the Lions already have on their defense, such as Charles Harris and Romeo Okwara, who will be back from injury this year, and his brother Julian Okwara. The Lions have some pretty solid pass rushers, and I definitely think that their pass rush is going to take a step up this year. The question I do have is their secondary. Their cornerback 1 right now is their former first-round pick, Jeff Okudah, who has really not turned out to be worthy of the 3rd overall pick, which they selected him with back in 2020. So really their entire defense is pretty young and unproven, especially their secondary, but I really like the talent on their defensive line with 2 rookies last year for defensive tackle that they have. And then now they have 2 new edge rushers. They have some veterans with Charles Harris and Okwara. So their defensive performance is really going to be based on their secondary, and I think that's what the Lions will kind of focus on in the future. The next couple of drafts, I really think they'll tackle getting some more talent in the secondary. And the last real point I want to make in this video is about Jared Goff. I know Goff gets a lot of criticism for how he's kind of played the last couple of years for the Rams before getting traded, but he had a pretty solid year for the Lions last year. He completed 67% of his passes for 3,200 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. And that was with a pretty limited receiving core. We already mentioned some of the injuries and players that they didn't really have acquired last year that they do now. I think this is a huge year for Goff if he wants to remain in the Lions' future. They now have a great receiving core: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, and DJ Chark, as well as a top 10 offensive line. There's really no excuses for him to not have a successful year for the Lions. And I think he really needs to have a great year and probably get the Lions to close to a winning season if he wants to remain their quarterback. And even then, I don't know if that's going to be enough for the Lions to not get a quarterback in next year's draft, which is a pretty loaded quarterback class. But I'm really intrigued with the talent the Lions have across the board on their team. I think their next season's success is going to come down to the development of young players that they have, and then the quarterback position. position. How well is Jared Goff going to play? I don't think the Lions are ready to compete for a playoff spot yet, but I do think that they can have a fairly good leap next year in development and be ready to compete in 2023. But I really do believe people are kind of underrating the Lions next year and thinking they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I think they have more than enough talent to be at least a pretty mid-tier team next year, and with a few moves and some development, they can definitely be a pretty good team come 2023 and 2024. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you guys do enjoy it. Let me know what you guys think of the Lions and what you think of all their young players and how they're going to perform next season. And let me know how good you think the Lions are going to be in 2022. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.